Hello and welcome to a special live programme from Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works, Essex&Suffolk Water's water treatment works that supplies parts of central Essex, Brentwood, Chelmsford and some of the London boroughs, Dagenham, Barking, Redbridge and Havering. That's some 40 miles away from here. This water treatment works is supplied by Abberton Reservoir, and I'm just here by the inlet from where the water comes in from the reservoir. This is where it's pumped up from the abstraction point into the water treatment works. Now, Essex&Suffolk Water project to enlarge Abberton Reservoir and also to the pipeline network across East Anglia to bring more water down to Abberton Reservoir. Let's find out a little bit more about the massive £150 million project. We've now come inside here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works, but if we just take you outside and have a quick look, we're going to be telling you a little bit about the Patterson filter block. That's one of the first stages of filtration here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. So hopefully we can see those pictures just outside now. That's the scene live for you this morning. And as you can see, it's a bit overcast and grey here. So that's the scene here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. But we were telling you a bit about the Abberton Reservoir Enlargement project there. And Essex&Suffolk Water has been working on this project since 2010. It's a £150 million project, and we're very proud to announce that actually we have completed filling the reservoir to its new top water level. It now has 15 billion extra litres of water in it, securing water supplies well into the future. Let's find out a little bit more with Heidi Mottram, our Chief Executive.
Cool.
Okay. Glistening and gleaming water now covering a wider expanse. This shows how full Abberton Reservoir is currently. Full to its new brim and 58% larger than it was.
I think everybody knows how precious water is and how Essex is one of the driest parts of our country. So we're just delighted to have delivered the Abberton Reservoir expansion project on time and to budget, and as a result of that, secure water for our customers in Essex for many, many years to come.
Construction work began in 2010 and finished last year. With the dam being built up, a concrete shoreline removed and a new visitors centre for the Essex Wildlife Trust, just some of the changes made to accommodate 15 billion litres of extra water.
We're absolutely delighted that the reservoir is now complete, it's now full, and it represents 23 years of hard work to get to this point.
It's a culmination of a long-term project. To see it as it is today, where it's just nudging up to the 21 metres, is very rewarding.
Treated drinking water from Abberton Reservoir supplies Chelmsford, Brentwood and the London boroughs of Havering, Barking and Dagenham and Redbridge. The official opening ceremony will take place in May, and details of that special event will be made public very shortly.
It's tremendous news for customers. Essex is the driest county in the UK, and we've been able to secure supplies of water to our customers for the next at least 25 years, and we would hope for maybe 40 to 50 years.
So there we go, that's Abberton Reservoir. It's now reached its new top water level, and joining me now is the project manager for the enlargement of Abberton Reservoir. It's Dan Wilson. Good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning, Oliver.
Now, you must be absolutely thrilled that the reservoir has actually reached this new top water level.
Yeah, I'm delighted that we've got here. It seems like a long way since we actually started thinking about this project, but it's fantastic that we've now reached the 21 metres above sea level mark, which enables the reservoir to hold 41 billion litres of water.
Which is huge, isn't it? And that's about sort of 6,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
16,000 Olympic-sized
well,
swimming
the
pools.
total capacity, but the extra increase of 50 million is 6,000 Olympic swimming pools, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's heavy, isn't it, water? It's very heavy, so it needs to be pumped about the place.
Yeah, we do a lot of pumping. Reservoir water comes in from our pumping stations at Stratford and Brantham, and also now from Wormingford, which is one of the new pumping stations that we constructed as part of the reservoir scheme itself.
Just give us a bit of background to some of the major alterations that had to happen to Abberton Reservoir before you actually got on to the business of increasing the sides and making the reservoir much, much bigger.
Okay, well, we needed to do a lot of utility diversions around the reservoir. There are existing high pressure gas mains, intermediate pressure gas mains, and a lot of electrical cables. They all needed to be diverted because obviously with the reservoir now holding so much more water, the footprint of the reservoir has got much, much larger. So we've had to do a lot of pre-works before actually getting our contractors on site to do that. Similarly, we also had to do a lot of tree and hedgerow clearance to make space for the enlarged reservoir. And that's been mitigated by additional planting schemes that we've had going on around the reservoir since the completion.
Because at one end of the reservoir you had a special area extended for nature, for wildlife to go to as a special kind of quiet area.
That's right. So the reservoir is designated as a triple SI, an SPA and a Ramsar site for its overwintering wildfowl. We're conscious that when we were doing the construction work we needed to create an alternative habitat for some of those wildfowl species. So we created 6 hectares of additional wetland scrapes down at the western end of Abberton Reservoir, and that allowed those birds to move into that area whilst we were actually doing the construction works out the reservoir itself.
And I think you planned some of the works, didn't you, around the reservoir so that you only worked in certain areas depending on which type of species were in residence?
That's exactly right. We did a lot of work in advance of doing the construction to understand how the species that use the reservoir were actually using it. And what we did, once we understood that behavioural patterns, we were able to manipulate how we undertook the construction such that we were mitigating and limiting the disturbance on those bird species.
Now, just take us through the history of Abberton Reservoir, because it does have a very interesting history, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Abberton was constructed in the 1930s, and at the outbreak of war, the reservoir was actually mined to prevent any invasion forces landing on the reservoir. That comprised both the series of mines placed directly on the water surface and also a number of measures that actually went around the reservoir itself. Whilst the World War II was taking place, there was no public access allowed to the reservoir, and that increased the amount of bird species that were actually visiting, and hence the SPA and the other ecological designations it attracted. The other interesting point about Abberton Reservoir is that it was one of the last practice raids before the dam busters operations took place. So the bombers would come over Abberton Reservoir and practice their bombing runs before heading over to Norway.
Now, some of the big kind of works that you did whilst enlarging the reservoir were one to remove the concrete outer shell,
Yep.
and also to raise the dam, the actual sides of the reservoir, just so people can sort of get a picture in their mind. A reservoir is a bit like a water butt, isn't it, in your garden?
Yeah, it is. It's very much like that. You obviously have a huge volume of water being held, ready for us to abstract from and draw up to the water treatment works here at Layer-de-la-Haye. But there are a key number of functions that we had to do whilst we were undertaking the construction to actually maintain that supply to the water treatment work. So everything we were doing had to be very sensitive, not only to the ecology that we've spoken about a little bit earlier, but also to ensure that we didn't have any sort of detrimental impacts on the water quality that was going up to the treatment works. So, for example, whilst we were doing the removal of the concrete edge, we needed to do that in a staged process, very sympathetically monitoring water quality before it actually, or to make sure there was no detrimental impacts on that water quality before it came up to the reservoir. So that was a very sensitive thing that we had to do. And there was a great team working together to ensure that there was no detrimental effects, a constant relationship with our production colleagues and the construction colleagues.
And then you had to rebuild the pumping station and also the valve tower on the reservoir.
Yeah, so going back to the analogy you had of the water butt in your garden, we were actually increasing the size of the reservoir to make it able to hold more water. And there are a number of structures around the reservoir, one being the pumping station itself, which we had to effectively demolish and rebuild at a higher level. And the other thing was the valve tower. Now, the valve tower contains a very interesting piece of infrastructure, which is something called the Lana Johnson valve, and that allows us to actually remove or drain the reservoir if we ever needed to do that in emergency.
So the plug hole, if you like.
The plug hole, effectively, yeah. And we've actually salvaged that. It's a Glenfield valve, and that's now in the car park outside of the water treatment works here. We've refurbished that because it's quite a heritage piece. You don't see a piece of equipment of that size anymore.
And that had to be lifted out with a large crane, didn't it?
Yeah, that was a very complex operation. We actually sited the crane on the dam, a very deep or a very long lift, effectively lifting that piece of equipment out, lifting it back over the dam, putting it onto a waiting vehicle and taking it off-site. It was a very well-controlled operation, obviously has to be undertaken in the right conditions, no strong winds, and that went very, very well, and we're pleased to have it in the car park out here at Layer-de-la-Haye as a heritage piece.
So to give some idea of the length of time that this infrastructure will be around, was that valve an original valve?
Yeah, so that was installed originally back in the 1930s. A very good, robust piece of British engineering that stood the test of time. But modern day technology has replaced valves of that size now. So we've maintained the function to drain down the reservoir, of course, but it's undertaken now with a much smaller piece of equipment.
And of course, we're expecting that to last maybe a similar length of time, are we?
Yeah, we still design now for a similar longevity, and everything's pointing towards the fact that that those pieces of equipment are working very well to this date. We are required under the Reservoirs Act to test those pieces of equipment, and they're performing very well.
Mm-hmm. And we have to fill the reservoir up in different stages, don't we, to test the strength of the dam?
Yeah, that's right. So increasing the water level from the former 17.8 metres above sea level to 21, we've done that in incremental stages, and that's allowed us to monitor the performance of the dam. We fully expect dam structures to actually move both in what we call a vertical plane, but also in an XY plane. And we have a number of monitors in the actual dam there to tell us how that performance is, or how that dam is moving. But at each stage, as we raise the reservoir up, we hold it for a week or so, make sure that the dam is performing exactly as it should do, I'm delighted to say that the dam is performing exactly as we fully anticipated it to when we were doing the design phase.
And also now we've got that 15 billion litres of extra water in the reservoir, so really it's up and running and functioning now, the project, isn't it?
Exactly. We've still got some work to do with regards to ecological works. There's a lot of commitments that we made in the planning stage of the project, so we're underway with those now. But in terms of it providing a service to the water company and a service to our customers, holding additional water, making sure we're more resilient to drought periods, it's performing exactly as we anticipated it would. And looking back to when we actually conceived the idea back in the 90s to where we are now, it's been a long period, it's been a very difficult or testing period for everyone involved, but it's a fantastic resounding success, especially that only this week we managed to actually fill it up to that 21 metres above sea level.
And of course, one of the enhancements to wildlife, we've talked quite a lot about wildlife, are things like extra shallows, aren't they? Because before, with the concrete bank, we actually had a very deep incline, didn't we, straight into the actual reservoir, so that's changed about the profile of the...
Yeah, that's right. The reservoir embankment before we did our work was a concrete, quite a steep 1 in 2, 1 in 3 perhaps gradient. And what we did when we undertook the construction here is we removed all of that concrete and we made a much shallower slope to the reservoir, and it's a more natural edge now. It doesn't have any concrete. We've used erosion protection in certain areas that actually encourage vegetation growth up underneath that erosion protection material, and that in turn creates a much more suitable habitat for some of these dabbling ducks that feed between 0 and 1 metres. So we're fully expecting that the ecology around the reservoir will recover and will indeed be improved upon as a result of the work that we've done around the reservoir.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dan. We'll hear a bit more from you a little bit later on, because you're going to tell us a bit about some of the stuff you've done fundraising for WaterAid.
Yep.
So he'll be back with us a little bit later on. But let's find out. We mentioned that the water starts in a reservoir like Abberton Reservoir, then it comes into Layer-de-la-Haye water treatment works. We saw that inlet a little bit earlier on at the start of the programme. But let's talk a little bit about some of the processes it goes through once it reaches the water treatment works. And our guide is Katie Murdoch.
Before our water reaches your tap, it goes through a rigorous cleaning process to make sure it is the best quality water for drinking. We clean the water to remove any colour or dirt, and also to take out any bacteria. The water treatment process is made up of 4 main stages: abstraction, clarification, filtration and disinfection. Our journey starts here at a reservoir, river, lake or borehole, where raw water is abstracted and pumped to a water treatment works. The water may contain rubbish, leaves, branches, insects and even fish at this stage, and we will screen it to remove these things. The next stage is to add a coagulating chemical. It acts like a magnet and attracts things like dirt and bacteria. It helps us remove it from the water. As the particles stick together, they become heavier and sink to the bottom of the tank, forming a sludge that is removed. The water is still not ready to be drunk, so it moves on to these rapid gravity filters to remove any remaining solids. Travelling through sand will trap small particles left in the water and help to make it cleaner. These filters are washed on a regular basis and prepare the drinking water for the final treatment stage. For water containing a lot of organic matter, or which may contain pesticides, an additional filtration stage is used at some treatment works. Ozone gas is bubbled through the water, and then the water is passed through more filters containing granular activated carbon. This is very effective at trapping any remaining organic particles and removing most pesticides from the water. By now, the water will look clean, but it could still contain germs. We add a small, safe dose of chlorine, and this helps kill any bacteria still left in the water from previous processes. Chlorine is used in all water treatment processes across the world and has been for many years. It makes the water safe for you to drink. At all points along the way, the water is continuously monitored and tested to make sure we're adding the right amount of chemicals and the water's flowing smoothly. The water is now clean and safe and ready to be pumped to your home or business. If you'd like to find out more about the water treatment processes used by the company, please visit the education section of our website.
So there we go, that is Katie Murdoch giving us a brief rundown of the water treatment works and the processes that go on here at Layer-de-la-Haye. And she's taking us through the process and the journey that the water goes through when it comes out of the reservoir, through the different treatment processes into the filtration system and then the disinfectant before it's pumped out into service and comes out of a tap in your home. So, we talked a bit about the filtration processes there. One of the jobs that's been going on recently here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works in Essex is the digging out of the slow sand filters. So we're going to have a look at the processes that go on around those particular filters and to talk about the makeup of the sandwich layers that help to treat and filtrate the water as it goes through. So Paul Barker is the team leader here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works and he gives us a tour of those sand filters. Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works near Colchester has 20 large sand filters and produces around 100 megalitres of treated high-quality drinking water a day. As with any cleaning devices, these filters sometimes need cleaning and maintenance themselves.
The filters generally in service, we work on a 10-week skimming plan at the moment, so we'll run our filters for 10 weeks at a time. And what will happen is that the filter will filter out all the dirt and it will be left on top of the filter and it will start to blind it up and we won't get the water through. So the head loss will build up and the dirt content will build up. So every 10 weeks or so we'll skim the filter off, skim the top layer off to clean the sand.
This work is one of the main jobs happening at the water treatment works, digging out the filter beds not currently in use and cleaning the sand and other materials used to make up the filter beds. Then reinstating the cleaned materials. Each bed can produce around 10 megalitres a day of water. These filters are often referred to as sandwich filters because of the makeup of the filtration layers. Paul Barker explains how the layers are constructed.
On the bottom of this particular filter is bricks, so they're made up with bricks made up in channels with bricks on top of other bricks and makes up a channel and all the water goes through there. On top of the bricks we put 200 ml of 20 ml stone. On top of that we put 100 ml of 10 ml stone. Then we put 200 ml of sand in, which we refer to as undersand. We'll then put 100 ml of carbon, which is put in the filter to treat pesticides and remove the pesticides out of the water. And then we'll put in a layer of top sand, which can be anywhere between 450 and 600 mil.
Once in operation, the filter beds develop a complex biological culture that helps to clean and purify the water. This layer is known as the smooch decker.
The smooch decker is what cleans the filter, so that's got all this biological little bugs in it that eat all the dirt and that cleans the water, and when it comes out the bottom of the filter through the bricks it's all bacteria free.
After passing through the filter bed, the water is then treated with a safe dose of chlorine to make sure it is suitable for drinking and is pumped to homes and businesses across central and southern Essex. Team leader Paul Barker explains more about his work at the water treatment works.
My role as team leader, I run a treatment works, so I've got a team of controllers who manage the site for us and they make sure that all our water quality standards are met all our QEMS forms and everything quality related they'll look after. They'll make sure that the filters are in service, they'll put them in and out, they'll make sure that our primary filters are washing, make sure all our chlorine targets are met, they'll order the chemicals for the site.
What would you say is the best thing about your job?
Best thing about my job is working at the Layer Treatment Works. It's a beautiful place to work, it's got a lovely place to work, it's a beautiful area, yeah, I really like it.
We've come outside now to the Patterson filters at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works, and I'm joined now by Essex Operations Manager David Ayland. David, morning to you.
Morning.
It's a lovely morning to be out here amongst the filters, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So let's just start off. We can see a filter behind us, right over there. Just tell us a bit about how they function.
Okay, well, we're at the inlet to the treatment works, so this is part of the original works that dates back to 1939. The water is arriving over this weir just behind us here, and this is the point at which we would remove any unwanted World War II mines. The water then flows onto the filters behind us here. Basically these filters are rapid gravity filters, which means that the water flows through a mixture of fairly coarse sand and gravel. And the purpose of these filters is to remove any suspended particles, so sediment or algae from the reservoir itself. What we're trying to do here is to reduce the cloudiness or the turbidity of the water, and we'd expect to see typically a five-fold improvement in the clarity of the water at this point.
So this is the first stage of filtration, isn't it, the Patterson filter?
Yes, this is the initial clean-up, these filters operate automatically. So originally they would have been operated by hand, but over the years the works has been expanded and modernised, and it's now fully automatic. So there are sensors monitoring the flow and the pressure and the clarity of the water coming through these filters, and periodically these filters will automatically backwash themselves, so they'll be flushed with clean water to allow them to continue to operate properly.
Now, we were just seeing the slow sand filters. There's 20 of those here at Layer-de-la-Haye, and they're being cleaned out. That's the next stage, isn't it, after this?
That's the next stage of the filtration process, yes. And the slow sand filters are very much larger, the much larger surface area. And the reason for that is they are a biological filter. So these filters behind us here are in effect straining the water. The slow sand filters start purifying the water.
And we heard that wonderful word from Paul Barker, the Schmutzdecker, which is the biological level, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's right. So in effect, the sand is a support medium for the good bacteria and the biological activity that's going on the surface of the sand within that Schmutzdecker. Yeah.
Now, we heard quite a lot about the different filtration that goes on here. You put different layers in those sand filters. The Patterson filter behind us, that just has sand in it, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. Sand and gravel in the Patterson filters, but within the middle of the slow sand filters there's a layer of carbon, and that's really important to make sure that we remove any unwanted pesticides from the water going through them.
Now we're going to hear a little bit more about the work that Essex and Suffolk Water does to work with farmers upstream in the rivers and boreholes and those different things, and the catchment management side of things in a short while. But let's talk a bit more about your role more generally, David. You're the Essex Operations Manager.
Yep.
So what does that role involve?
Okay, so my team are responsible for the collection, storage and treatment of the water. But also we're responsible for the distribution of the water through the pipes to the customers' taps. And we also look after the pumps, the pipes and the treatment works in terms of the operation and maintenance.
So you have an overview of both sides of it, the production side of things here at a water treatment works like Layer, and also some of the roadworks and the distribution network out as it goes towards people's homes.
Absolutely, and what's not very well understood is that Essex is actually the driest county in the UK, and in an average year we would get the same level of rainfall as places like Tel Aviv in Israel. So we have to be very careful with the resources that we have, that we don't waste them, and we put an awful lot of effort into maintaining the network to reduce leakage. And I'm proud to say that again last year leakage levels in the Essex and Suffolk area were the lowest in the country.
So I suppose if people know anything about Essex and Suffolk Water, one of the things they're going to notice is when we're drilling the road outside their house or on their street, isn't it?
Well, it is, and we recognise that that does cause inconvenience and affect traffic flow, but we work very closely with the highway agencies to try and minimise the impact of that work. But it is essential if we want to keep on top of the leakage issue.
It is, and as you mentioned, Essex and Suffolk Water has a very good record on leakage, doesn't it?
We do, yes, definitely, yes.
Industry leading, isn't it? Yeah.
Industry leading certainly industry leading last year and many years before that as well.
So just turning back to a water treatment works like this water treatment works will be typically supplying how many sort of megalitres a day? Around 100, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, our average is about 100. The maximum, though, is 145 megalitres a day. And to put that into perspective, at that maximum flow, you'd fill 2.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools in about an hour. It's an awful lot of water. The other interesting thing is that the water that we produce here doesn't supply the local towns and villages. That water is transferred via 3 very large diameter aqueducts to the main population centres in central Essex and parts of East London, as you said earlier.
And of course, it's really, really important, isn't it, to think about saving water and also conserving water, because it's a finite resource, isn't it? We don't have loads of it. Although we're talking about enlarging a reservoir and we've filled that up, there's not more fresh water being created in the world, is there?
There isn't, and the water that finds its way into Abberton Reservoir has travelled a very long distance. I mean, some of it has come from far away as Kings Lynn in Norfolk via the Ely Ouse to Essex river transfer system. So it's a very valuable resource, and we look after it as best we can.
So that's a really interesting point, isn't it? So if I'm turning my tap on in Brentwood or in Redbridge or somewhere like that, am I getting water that's been treated here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works from Abberton, or am I getting water from Norfolk, or am I getting a blend of waters?
Well, in theory, you're getting a proportion of that water from, yes, as far away as Kings Lynn in Norfolk. Typically about a quarter to a third of the water supplied to Brentwood comes from this particular treatment works. Only about half of the water that we need in Essex comes from the Essex rivers, so the rest is imported from outside of the county.
So once it's been through the 2 stages of filtration, it's then dosed with some chlorine, isn't it?
Yes, the biological processes in the slow sand filters are very good at purifying the water, as I said earlier. We really add the chlorine as a final protection against any further contamination in the network. So yes, we put a very small, safe dose of chlorine in the water as a final stage just before it leaves the treatment works.
And that's when it's pumped to, say, a water tower, which you might see in your local community?
Yes, water towers. We also got a lot of underground reservoirs, and the idea of both the towers and the reservoirs is to provide a buffer, to provide storage, if you like, in the network so that we can cope with peaks and troughs in demand as people use the water. You can actually see very regular patterns in how water is used by our customers. So, for example, Christmas Day and Boxing Day are always the lowest demand for water every year. Summer, as you would expect, demand for water is higher generally than in the winter. But we also see variations during the day, and first thing in the morning is a very high demand, and similarly first thing in the evening when people come home from school and from work. So these reservoirs will rise and fall during the day to keep pace with that changing demand.
So we can tell from that a lot of people, a lot of families in Essex have relations that live elsewhere.
You could say that, yes.
So they go away for Christmas.
Maybe.
Excellent. We'll be back with you very shortly, David, so just stay there for us. We're by the Patterson block here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. We're now going to find out about some of the work that's going on upriver, work in the catchment of rivers, work with farmers that Essex and Suffolk Water's doing to help reduce pesticides and other chemicals that make their way into the watercourse before they flow into a reservoir or make it into groundwater. So let's find out about the catchment team at Essex and Suffolk Water.
Rivers are one of our most precious sources of water, and at Essex and Suffolk Water we've been working hard to forge partnerships to protect and enhance those river catchment areas in a variety of different ways. We hope this short film will just give you a little bit more flavour of the kind of things we've been doing.
The aim of our catchment approach is to protect and improve the quality of the rivers from which we abstract water, so that we can consistently provide our customers with water that's safe and wholesome to drink. We employ catchment advisors across our area, and part of their role is to sample the rivers at various points across our catchments each week, and this creates a strong evidence base to inform the delivery of the catchment advice that we give.
All laboratories are accredited for testing the wide range of substances found in water, including pesticides, nitrates and colour or dissolved carbon. The results of these analyses on samples of water from the rivers and reservoirs in our region are used by our catchment advisor to provide guidance to farmers and growers about how to reduce losses of these substances from their land. This is some of the equipment that we use to test for really low levels of pesticides in waters in our region. Our methods of testing have been designed to look for minute traces of colour and individual pesticides in the water. For example, we need to be able to detect pesticides at less than 1 part pesticide in 10 billion parts of water. The speed of turnaround of samples is also important, as this enables our advisor to establish the link between pesticide use, recent rainfall and the levels that are found in our river and reservoir waters.
As a water company, we work in partnership with other organisations, and we run events and training sessions for farmers and their advisors on topics like nutrient management planning and machinery calibrations. And our catchment advisors also go out to farms and provide one-to-one advice on topics like pesticide handling.
Pesticides can get lost from the filling process through inadvertent spills, drips from the machine. So it's important to capture those spills and make sure that they're not getting into the groundwater or watercourses.
Spray filling area here, water comes in into the sump tank and then is filtered through the 3 stages of the biofilter.
I work quite closely with Steve Derbyshire from Essex and Suffolk Water inside the Stour and Colne catchment. We go out to do one-to-one farm visits with farmers, and because we've got different specialities, we can give quite good all-around advice.
Before we had this filling area, we were filling up in the other side of the farmyard, and it was just a completely unsuitable area. It had been used for about 30 years, and it was a piece of concrete where any water off the concrete was going onto a grassed area. It was just taking the step to go and do something better like we have now.
Essex and Suffolk Water have seen biobeds as the way forward in good practice for pesticide handling, and we've funded this biobed and numerous others in our other catchments to promote that good practice.
I look after the trainee programme for our new graduates that come into the company and wish to become agronomists. And for the last 2 or 3 years we've taken them down to the Barsham Waterworks, the treatment works there, to show them how it works, what they do. It's a very costly business to try and remove contaminants.
By doing all this catching, we're giving ourselves a chance to ensure that water quality within the rivers and the catchment is of the highest possible standard. If the water quality is of an excellent standard as it's extracted from the rivers, then that will reduce the costs within the water company for treating the water, and at longer term there's a potential to pass these cost savings on to the customer.
Hopefully that's shown you how some of our work is helping to protect water in the natural environment, and how important these partnerships are to protecting water quality not only now but in the future.
So there was a short film telling you about some of the work that Essex and Suffolk Water is doing to work with farmers and other users of rivers and watercourses to help make the water that comes into reservoirs and then water treatment works much, much cleaner. and that's our catchment team that carries out that particular work. Now, I'm still with David Ayland, the Essex Operations Manager. We've come back inside to our studio facility here at the Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. We're live this morning between 10 and 11. We'll also be live again between 12 and 1, live from the Water Treatment Works here, telling you about how your water is treated and distributed. And we're just going to talk a bit about the distribution network. And you mentioned there about metering and peak demand troughs whilst we were out at the Patterson filter, and at Christmas Day and Boxing Day, very low demand. There's also some metering that we do to make sure that we monitor the network, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. It's part of our leakage reduction programme. We monitor the amount of water that's going into and coming out of defined areas of our network called district meter zones. And what we know is that the 4 o'clock in the morning is the time when demand from customers, businesses and domestic houses is at its lowest. So what we do is we monitor that minimum night flow around about 4 o'clock in all of these zones, looking for any changes. And if we see the levels starting to come up, we know that there's probably an increase in leakage in that area. And that's when we will send in our leakage detection technicians. Now, these are specialists with very sophisticated equipment which allow them to, in effect, listen electronically for leakage on the network. And then we can send our crews in and carry out the repairs, and that's how we keep leakage at such very low levels.
Because that's one of the ways you detect a leak, isn't it? By using listening sticks and also devices.
Yes.
Just physically hearing the sound of water running out of the pipe.
And you will see our people, our technicians, still using these kind of manual listening devices. But we've also got much more sophisticated electronic systems that effectively do the same, but allow us to pinpoint exactly on a pipeline where the leakage is occurring.
And then there'll have to be some roadworks, it'll be dug out, and then the pipe either replaced or fixed, depending on how we want to do it.
Yeah, we haven't quite got to the point yet where we have self-healing pipes, but who knows, in the future, maybe something we can look forward to.
Yes. So if I'm a customer, I am a customer of Essex&Suffolk Water in Chelmsford, why should I save money? Why should I save water?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, Ollie, because actually, as well as being environmentally friendly and helping to
conserve natural resources.
You can actually save yourself some money, not only if you have a meter, but by using less hot water, you're going to save energy as well. And we do offer a lot of free advice on our website, and people can also apply for free water saving kits by visiting our website.
So that's one of the key ways to reduce your water bill, isn't it? By using less product.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, David Ayland, who is the Essex Operations Manager for Essex&Suffolk Water. It's been a valuable insight, some of the work that goes on here and out on the network, the distribution network of pipes around Essex, about how we treat and supply the water. We're now going to talk a little bit about saving water around the home and what you can do. And our water efficiency team is going to tell you a bit more about this, and we can join Sarah Bowerman from Essex&Suffolk Water.
Here at Essex&Suffolk Water, we are the leading company in helping our customers save water and reduce their utility bills. In this short film, we aim to show you what happens during a home audit visit that forms part of our multi-award winning H2 Eco water saving project. Guided by our team here at Essex&Suffolk Water, you'll see what happens when an approved plumber visits your home and also the types of products fitted.
All appointments are pre-arranged.
Mrs Smith,
Yeah.
I'm from Essex&Suffolk Water for your pre-arranged appointment.
Yeah, that's great.
Mrs Edwards, hello there, I'm from Essex&Suffolk Water for your pre-arranged appointment.
And you can request a personal password that the plumber must quote on arrival as an additional security method.
The first step is to help you understand where you can save water around your home and in your garden.
The place where we use the most water is in our toilet. An average person flushes the toilet 5 times a day and between 7 and 9 litres per flush. This soon adds up.
Most modern toilets fitted after 2001 are already water efficient. For older models, particularly those with handle flushes, there are many devices that we can use that will reduce the water used by your toilet, such as eco-beaters. These are devices that will convert a single flush toilet to a dual flush. It'll save about 30 litres of water per property per day. An alternative product is a saver flush. This is a bit like putting a brick in your system and will reduce each flush by 1 litre.
Whilst in the bathroom, the plumber will check the flow rate of your shower. This can be a major area of water use, and simply by ensuring you have the most appropriate shower head, water use can be reduced without compromising your shower experience. An assessment of your water system will enable the plumber to determine the best shower head for you. In some cases, customers already have the best shower head installed.
Interestingly, time spent in the shower varies enormously, even within a household. Some people will take 5 minutes, others more like 20 or 30.
Using a timer can have a dramatic impact on the amount of water used and will help you save time in the shower.
The flow rate of your tap will be measured to see if a tap insert can be fitted. We have a range of different tap inserts to suit different customers, and they work by introducing air into the water flow, reducing the volume of water used whilst maintaining the pressure of flow. And you'll end up with a champagne effect with lots of bubbles.
Bath or bath? We know some customers prefer a bath. That's why we also leave a measure to work out how much water your bath holds. It's got a handy thermometer to help you check the temperature of your water.
Often, kitchen sinks can be a good place to reduce water use by fitting a tap attachment. Now that the technical audit is complete, the plumber will spend some time offering some hints and tips around your water usage behaviour and how you can make quick changes to your routine.
So as you can see, we've got the tea towel, so thank you very much for
No,
that.
that's not a problem. Right, the good news is you are eligible for a water butt as you've got a suitable downpipe.
Yeah.
Also, we can give you one of these free hose pipe attachments as you have a garden tap. Okay. Couple of other little bits here. This is our Take the Challenge shower timer. Basically, it's just a 5-minute egg timer. So the idea is, with the little sticker, you stick it on your tile, turn it round. The idea is, if you can beat that, that's the most efficient shower we could possibly ask you of.
Before we leave your home, we'll give you an additional information pack and an activity pack for your children.
We run the H2 Eco project on an annual basis via a town-by-town approach in the areas of Essex and Suffolk that we supply high-quality drinking water to.
That's our water efficiency team here at Essex and Suffolk Water telling you about our H2 Eco programme and the home audits visit programme that goes along with that, which can help you save money on your water bill and also your other utility bills, and also help you to save water as well. So if you're interested in getting one of our home water saving kits, then you can log on to our website eswater.co.uk and click on the Saving Water tab, and there's an online ordering form there. So that's where you go if you want to get one of those water saving kits, and you get a range of different devices, as they were saying on the film, that will help you to put tap inserts in, and they're very simple to fit, and you can do that yourself, or you can look at arranging a home audit like we've seen in the film just a moment ago. You're watching us live from Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. David Ayland, the Essex Operations Manager for Essex and Suffolk Water, is still with me. Now, last week was National Apprentice Week.
Yes.
And it was a government campaign. So just tell us a bit about how you started off in the water company.
Well, I started a long time ago, in 1979 to be precise, and I came in as a trainee lab technician. And even in those days, we were encouraged to further our career by doing further education, and I was lucky enough to be sponsored to become a chemist. So that's how I started, and I've worked in lots of different roles across the business since then. But we still support the apprentice principle. We have had lots of apprentices over the years, and like me, what we tend to find is that many of those apprentices end up with a long-term career with us.
That's the thing, isn't it? The water industry offers a fabulously interesting, diverse range of different careers in civil engineering, in scientific jobs, in technological jobs, as well as in the customer call centre as well. There's a whole range of different jobs on offer, isn't there?
A huge myriad of different types of jobs, absolutely, yeah.
I think people sometimes think that perhaps we're just about pipes in the ground, aren't we, and things like that. So just talk to us a little bit about some of the kind of the range of jobs in the company. There's also sort of corporate jobs, isn't there, as well?
Yes, well, finance is obviously a big important factor for us. We've got a fairly large HR team, so people related skills are important. IT is an increasingly important part of what we do. And as I said earlier, a lot of our water treatment processes are now fully automated. So as well as process skills, electronics and process engineering is becoming really important to us.
And yeah, and computer engineering and things like that, use of computers and stuff.
Yes.
Okay then, David, well that's very interesting. Started out in 1979, so you obviously enjoyed your career, yes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. And it's still got a long way to go as well, hasn't it? So,
I hope so.
Yeah, hope so, fingers crossed. We're going to just now turn to Katie Murdoch, a water treatment works manager from Essex&Suffolk Water, and she's going to tell us a bit about her role and what she does and how she got started out in the water industry. And we're going to learn a bit more about how water treatment works.
I came into Essex&Suffolk Water as a graduate trainee and had quite a broad foundation. I worked through many different departments, so got a great experience of the breadth of work the water company does. I then became a project manager, so I worked on investment and construction projects on treatment works. And after a couple of years of working on construction sites, I did an MSc in civil engineering to further my knowledge in that field, and then thought I would try my hand at people management, not something that I'd tried before, and had thought that I perhaps would go down more of a technical route. But I spent a year as a team leader on one treatment works in Suffolk and loved it, loved the balance of the technical side and the people management side. So when the role of treatment works manager came up for me in Essex, it was something that I had to go for, and I've loved it since I've started in January.
So just take us through your role as a treatment works manager. You can be perhaps supervising the fixing of a pipe on site to also checking the kind of the dosing of chemicals, can't you? It's quite a varied role. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so the team that I look after take care of the water from where we abstract it, from rivers and boreholes, right through to putting it out into the distribution network. So it is really varied. We're doing a lot of civil work, mechanical work, but also quite a lot of involved electrical work as well. And as you say, we do deal with quite a lot of hazardous chemicals as well. So there's a lot of health and safety processes that we need to make sure we comply with.
So what would your advice be to someone who's starting out, leaving the education system? How would they perhaps approach engineering or a scientific sort of job?
I'd advise them to take any opportunity that they get, not worry about whether it's a field that they think they're going to stay in for life or a field that they thought they were going to do when they were little. No one tends to know where they'll end up, and I certainly didn't aim to become a treatment works manager when I left university, but I knew that I wanted to do something that had a balance of outdoor work as well as work indoors and more on the strategy side. So when a practical job came along, I thought I'd give that a try. So I just advise people to follow their interests. If they can do some voluntary work in the time between university and getting their first job, that always looks great, because you've shown enthusiasm and passion for getting involved.
Would you say that was more your personality type, that you were more of an outdoors sort of person?
I tend to be, yeah. I do a lot of sport. I like to keep fit, and I like to have a practical element to my role as well as the more number crunching side.
How much would you say your role is office based, and how much would you say is out in the field? And do you find it physically demanding?
I'd probably say about 20% of it is outdoors, if I'm honest with myself. I would love to spend more time outside, but I'd probably say it was an 80-20 balance. So it's not physically demanding, but certainly the people that work for me that are based on the site, and also the team leaders, have a lot of physical demands on them as well. So I kind of luck in when I can, but at the same time I've lots of requirements of me in meetings, in offices, and making sure that I'm working to the best for my team, really.
You're also a STEM ambassador, and you go into schools and talk about your experience and things like that. So just tell us a little bit about that side of your kind of work.
Yeah, so I like to try and encourage children to get involved, particularly in the scientific and technical side of things, and particularly engineering. As you know, there are less women in that field. So I go along to sort of careers evenings and chat not only to the children but to parents as well, because until you know what's out there, how do you know what career you want to do? And certainly in the water industry, you'd never imagine what's behind the water that comes out of your tap.
Now, we talked a lot about access to safe, clean drinking water and high quality drinking water supplies here in Essex, but let's just switch away from that, because Sunday is World Water Day, and it's a time when we reflect and learn about the water situation in other countries around the globe. And WaterAid is the official charity of the water industry here in the UK. And it is one that we as a company, Essex&Suffolk Water, do an awful lot of fundraising for. The Essex&Suffolk Water Fundraising Committee for WaterAid is celebrating having reached quite a significant milestone recently. We've raised over £200,000 for WaterAid since 2007. And one of those active fundraisers is Dan Wilson, the project manager on the Abberton Reservoir Enlargement Programme, who we met a little earlier on in this programme, and he's back with us now. Dan, you actually went to Nepal last year to see some of the projects that WaterAid sponsors out there. Just tell us a bit about what you did.
Okay, so the opportunity arose via an advertisement on the WaterAid website, encouraging WaterAid supporters and volunteers to raise £3,500. Once you'd raised that fundraising amount, you were able to take part in a trek in the Annapurna circuit in Nepal. So a group of one other colleague from the water company and probably 20 other colleagues from water companies across the UK all met down at Heathrow and flew out to Nepal, where we took part in a 7-day trek around the Annapurna circuit, sleeping in extremely cold temperatures, climbing to over 3,000 metres. But I think that was the personal achievement. But what was a really important part of the trip was actually getting to go and see some of the work that WaterAid do in supporting water and sanitation schemes in areas of the world where those water and sanitation supplies are not obviously up to the standard that we would expect in the UK. So we went to a village called Nulla, which was some 20 kilometres outside of Kathmandu, and got to meet the communities there and look at some of the interventions that WaterAid has made using some of the money that's been raised by water companies in the UK.
And sometimes WaterAid take advantage of the technical know-how and knowledge of engineers like yourself, don't they? And not specifically in this instance, but on other visits, don't they, abroad, they get you to muck in and do stuff.
Yeah, that's right. There's opportunities to volunteer with the implementation of some of the schemes, some of the sanitation schemes or some of the water supply schemes that WaterAid are undertaking in those particular areas. But one of the unique things about WaterAid, one of the reasons I think it's such a great success, is that they actually actively encourage the communities where they are working to undertake the construction and really get a buy-in to the schemes that they're implementing. And not only does that encourage ownership of those particular schemes, it also enables them to develop an understanding of how the schemes work, so if it does come into any problems in the future, those communities can take that ownership and they can actually repair it themselves. And that's a very unique way WaterAid approach the fundraising and the implementation of the water and sanitation schemes that they do.
Sustainability is such an important aspect to any project, isn't it? Including ones like Abberton and things like the ones that WaterAid do.
Yeah, that's right. There's the way we approach those schemes in the developed world, where we've been doing the Abberton scheme and the work that we do in Nepal. There are mirror images of one another in terms of what you have to consider when you're putting those engineering solutions together. And sustainability, ownership, maintenance, longevity are all parts of all part of the scenario that you need to consider in both aspects.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. And it's interesting to hear about your trip there to Nepal. We're going to find out a little bit about James Muir, a customer collections manager from our customer centre in Lowestoft. He went out to India last year to visit some of the water aid projects and learn more about the work that's going on there.
I've never seen something like this before in this kind of environment. There's wastewater running through the streets. I've seen it coming out of walls where people are draining it from their inside of their houses. There's no drainage, so it's going straight into the streets. It makes me feel hugely overwhelmed. It makes me reflect on the things that we have at home and take for granted. How often I turn on a tap and I don't even consider that it's just there. How many times I just go to the toilet and flush it and I don't consider the safety of the water that I drink. All of these things, and you reflect and you think these things I take for granted, they're just day to day, they're standard, and yet these people turn on the tap, take a glass of water, and it could be poisoning them.
There we are, James Muir from our customer team in Lowestoft. He went out to visit some different projects run by Water Aid in India last year, and it was very interesting there to see some of the work that's going on to help promote safe sanitation, clean drinking water supplies and hygiene education amongst young people in India there, being done by Water Aid, one of the official charities of the water industry. And also to tell you a little bit about Essex and Suffolk Water's fundraising committee, which is celebrating having reached quite a significant milestone, which is having raised over £200,000 for Water Aid since 2007. Now, in our broadcast yesterday, we met Kim Wallace, the Conservation Advisor for the Abberton project. So we're going to catch up with her again and hear about some of the work that she's been doing. Just tell us a bit about what your role entails. A conservation advisor, a clerk of works. Just tell us a bit about the types of jobs that you do.
So during the construction, I was the ecological clerk of works. I was out here on site working with all of the contractors, making sure that everything was going according to plan, looking after the wildlife. And now construction's all finished, it's continuing the habitat creation works and putting in all the plans that have been there for years into place to enhance it for all of the wildlife.
And for those people who are into bird watching and want to know why this site is such a special site, it's got a huge number of different designations, hasn't it? Ramsar site, Triple SI, Site of Scientific Interest. It's also a special protection area in places, isn't it? And just tell us about some of the species that are here.
Well, it's mainly important for its overwintering wildfowl. We have 11 SPA species, so they're mainly ducks. So we have the pochard, the tufted duck, which are kind of diving ducks. And dabbling ducks as well, so the gadwall, shoveler and teal. We've got an awful lot of teal over winter. Also got cormorant here, a big breeding colony of cormorant, which is key and is one of the citation species and quite unique to this site. And then we have waders coming in as well. So anyone coming here over winter, you get lots of birds, waders, waterfowl, summer months, the normal farmland birds. Whatever time of year you come, there's a lot of wildlife.
And occasionally you do see a bittern here as well, don't you?
Yes, occasionally. There's also marsh harrier, the occasional osprey, lots of other birds of prey.
And very good for owls as well, isn't it?
Yes,
So,
yeah, short-eared owls, and we've got barn owl boxes up.
Now I think we can see some of your work happening out in the field. We're looking at you doing a duck count at the moment, because that was one of the things you had to do, actually count the ducks, didn't you?
Yes, it's quite hard. We've counted the ducks for years and years, and it gives us a really good basis to understand what's going on at the site. It informed a lot of the pre-construction work as well, and it allows us to monitor how the site's changing, which has been really useful because we've seen an increase, which is great for the scheme.
And you mentioned there that the construction work was managed around the particular different species. Just tell us a bit about how that management process happened. I think it was different sections of the reservoir were worked on at different points depending on when species were around?
Yeah, well we collected an awful lot of information about how the site was used by birds before construction started, before we ever went near construction phase. So from that we were able to work out which parts of the reservoir were used most at which times of year. So we kind of worked it so that we could basically not cause disturbance to any of the birds whilst on site. And yes, as you say, we split it into different areas and only had people working in certain areas at certain times of the year. And yeah, it seemed to work very well.
There's been a lot of work to enhance the habitat for species here at Abberton Reservoir. That includes things like big, long shallows, which previously wasn't the case, wasn't it? Just describe how the reservoir has changed for the better for wildlife.
Well, the reservoir originally was just concrete-sided, quite steep, and it's amazing how great it was for wildlife then. So what we've done is grade it all back and create very shallow areas and different lagoons that will hold back water. So for wading birds and for dabbling ducks, it's just a massive improvement. And then we're putting in place reed beds and other wet grasslands, loads of different types of habitat to benefit all of the wildlife that come here.
And during construction you had to rehome some water voles as well, didn't you?
A few times, yes.
So what that meant moving it from different locations on the site to other locations, didn't it?
Yes, well fortunately we had a 6-hectare site down at one of the other parts of the reservoir that's kind of designated a quiet zone for wildlife, and that has established into a great reed bed area with loads of different nooks and crannies for water voles. There weren't any there, so when it came to actually moving them from the construction site, we had a perfect place for them to go. So yes, we trapped them out, they went on a little holiday just to make sure they're all okay, and then came back and were released, and they're doing very well. We monitor them still.
Now the reservoir is open for visitors to come and visit, isn't it?
Yes.
The Essex Wildlife Trust run a visitor centre here. Just tell us a bit about, would you recommend going down there and watching some birds?
Oh, absolutely. They've got a great setup, fantastic views over the whole of the reservoir. They've got loads of books and optics for you to look at as well, and very good cake.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's Kim Wallace, who's the Conservation Advisor on the Abberton Scheme project. Kim Wallace there, Conservation Advisor on the Abberton Scheme project. Well, that just about wraps it up. We're live here at Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works. We'll be back again between 12 and 1 today. So if you log on to www.youtube.com/Essex&Suffolk Water on our YouTube page, you'll be able to find the next viewer for the live web stream. And indeed, these particular programmes will stay on there as recorded programmes so you can view again at your leisure. So thank you very much for joining us, if you've been joining us here live from Layer-de-la-Haye Water Treatment Works, and we'll see you again at midday. Thanks very much. From me, Oliver Rogers, bye.